This video is about how I mix vocals. Now, this is not a problem-solving video where you've got some terrible sounding vocals and you need to know how to fix it. I probably need to make a whole other video about that because there's some weird stuff, and it's actually not that usual. Most vocals I get to mix sound pretty good. Now, what I'm using in this video for demonstration purposes is a song called Truth and Love by the Infamous Stringdusters from their Rise Sun album. These vocals were recorded using a Neumann U87 into a Telefunken V76 or V72. I'm not sure. I can't remember. It's a funky mic pre. From that mic pre, I went into a distressor compressor with my kind of standard setting and then into the machine and then got into the studio and mixed it. And let me show you what I did. This is something I do on a lot of my mixes. So the first thing I do is start by putting a high-pass filter on vocals because I want to get rid of the stuff I don't need. Now, I did this originally with this DSP compressor bank because it's got a pre-filter right here, and you can see I'm taking out everything below 98 hertz, and I put the pre-filter in line. Now, to better visualize that, let me show you it this way. Here's a FabFilter Pro Q3. You can see here, these frequencies here, this is just extra stuff. This is like, you know, some air. It could be the air conditioner unit. It's stuff that's not in the human voice, which will cumulatively add up and muddy up the mix. So I typically do a high-pass filter like this at, 100 hertz, 98 hertz. This guy's got a pretty thick voice, so I was giving him a little extra space, but I get rid of all that stuff first. Now, unless there's something really messed up with the vocal EQ that I know I'm going to have to deal with, I'm going to work on my compression first, because I've found that when I start compressing the vocals, especially the way that I compress them, that compression will bring out certain frequencies in the vocals that I wouldn't normally hear, like certain low mids in the vocals, low end, and also the essing. So I'll work on the compression first. Now, what I did on this song was use a DSP compressor like this. Actually, my normal process is a little different. I didn't do it with these guys because, like I said, we had recorded through really good gear. They're really great vocalists. They know how to control a mic. I was hitting a distressor compressor pretty hard when I went in, so I didn't need to do the extra level of compression because I'll have multiple levels. I went straight to my DSP right here. Now, once again, it doesn't have the release it used to have, but this is how I hit it right here. In step with time, it's got a high ratio, like 10-to-1. The release I would normally have a lot faster. I can't do it with this newer plugin. The attack is pretty short, like 3 to 4, maybe 5 milliseconds. I'm just going to hit it a little bit like that. Now with him, what I did, and I did it on all these guys, I actually put a limiter in there, which is a little unusual for me. I just found that there was something about this mic pre and the way that they were singing. I just wanted to knock off some of these little peaks once in a while. If you watch it, it barely, like there, it just barely hits once in a while. It's a bit unusual setting for me, but I did it on this one. Now, let me show you what I normally do. My normal go-to setting on the vocals is this. Let me bring up my preset here. I use this metric halo channel strip, and I really like it because I can get a really good compression on it that's not really obvious. Sometimes I'll make the attack a little bit longer. And as you can see, I've got my high-pass filter on here. This is where I would normally start that out at. Then my next step would be either to use this. This is a CLA emulation of an 1176 using their all-in button. And let me explain what this all-in button is. This all-in button here on the original hardware did not exist when the hardware came out. Originally, you had the 4, 8, 12, and 20 ratio settings. But somebody figured out along the way that if you pushed all those buttons in at the same time, it would do this weird thing where it kind of, like, I don't know, added them all together and it made it really pop. So the plugins now come with this all-in button. And I like this because it really makes the vocals pop. You know, the first compressor is just to even it out. This thing's definitely hype. Oh, and I should add a couple more things about this plugin before I move on. You got to make sure that the release here is set pretty fast. I know this seems wacky, but this is faster. This is slower. I know it seems backwards. Same thing with the attack, like this is faster, this is slower. But Let me show you what it sounds like. If you're using this setting and you got the longer release on it, it's going to be like this. Check it out.
The truth, find your love.
Like make it long. Just kind of kills it. It's got to be pretty fast. Now, if you go to the presets on here, you'll see, I think it's called Rock My Vocal. I've got it pretty close to what he's got, but he's got it pretty much all the way fast. He's got a slightly faster attack. I like mine a little slower, but got to have the super fast release. That's kind of the whole point. Now, I know a lot of people would think, oh, you shouldn't do that in a bluegrass record or whatever. Man, I do this process on almost every genre that I work on. Sometimes it's a more extreme effect. Sometimes it's a little more subtle. But basically, the process is the same because, folks, vocals are pretty much vocals. So anyway, I'm either going to use this guy.
In step with time, a candle
Here it is without it.
Smoke goes up, a table turns. Faces glow.
See, it kind of excites it. There's another version of this plugin right here, Bluey.
From a spark.
This is a model of another version they put out. It's a little more aggressive and bright sounding, so I'll tend to use the Bluey more for rock and the Blackie for, more acoustic stuff or female vocals. Now, if I don't like the sound of that one, my Boz Digital Labs Manic compressor. I've kind of emulated a setting that I used to have in the Mic DSP before they changed the plugins, which is an attack of 3.4 to 3.8 or something like that. I got my release down at, 5 or 6 milliseconds, which is really freaking fast. And my ratio is up, slightly above 10. And my threshold, I'm hitting till it pops the way I want it to. So this is a similar type effect. I might try this.
In step with time, a candle burns. Smoke goes up, a table turns.
No, there's that one.
Faces glow and light the dark.
Or this.
Like a flash of fire from a spark.
Kind of similar, but they have different characteristics. I'll pick one of those based on which one I like. Then the next thing I'll go to, in most cases, this is their lo-fi plugin. I actually don't use it as a lo-fi. I actually use it for kind of some distortion. It's almost like a tape emulator.
In step with time, a candle burns. Smoke goes up.
Kind of brings it forward a little bit. And look,
faces glow.
The normal setting is 0. I'm only turning it up to 0.5. And there's a big difference between 0.5 and 0.4 and 0.3 on vocals. It'll blow your mind how amazing this plugin is. Now, all these things that I'm doing here are going to add to the S's, because when you hit the compressor, it's going to make the loud vocals quieter. It's going to push that volume down. And then in between those loud sections where there's a breath or an S, that volume's going to come up, which is going to make your S's and your breaths really loud. And especially this plugin here will accentuate that. So my next step is to add in a de-essor.
In step with time, a candle burns.
Just to knock it down.
Smoke goes up,
now,
a table turns.
What I will add to the whole de-essor issue here is that, especially with these guys, sometimes with this mic pre and this mic, which sounded amazing, it was really accentuating the S's. If I was trying to get that de-essor to where it needed to be, it would start affecting other areas that I didn't really want it to. So I did some de-essing on it, but then I went through and, being my obsessive self, I actually went through and brought down the volume of individual S's. So if you look right here, that's how loud the S was originally. So it was like,
In step with time.
It's a little loud.
In step with time.
So I did this. I actually brought it down. I still got the de-essor on there. I got it as close as I could get it without affecting other things. And then I just had to go through the song. And every time there was an S, I'd bring that down a few dB so it sounded natural. Like here's another one. Yeah, like look at this. I went through and did that. So that would be my next step in the process. The next thing I'm going to do is start looking at EQ for the vocals. And let me explain something to you about EQing vocals. There's, in most cases, not one EQ on a vocal that's going to work all the way through the song because the singer's going to change. Like especially what I notice the most often is a really good singer, there'll be certain words or certain vowels when they hit it hard, there's going to be like this little harshness. It's usually 3.8K to 4.1K, somewhere right around there. And it's gonna pop out on an A or an E or certain words, and only for a split second. And I think what ends up happening is that people will hear those popping out and they go, oh, the vocal's harsh. It's like, no, the vocal isn't harsh. It's just these little points that come out once in a while, and you need to knock those down, which you can either do with automation or like I use a dynamic EQ or something like that. And I'll show you in a second what I'm talking about. The other thing, and especially in a song like this, is where is the singer singing? If they're in a low section of the song and going to a high section, the tone of their voice is going to change, which it should, but it doesn't mean that one set EQ is going to work for both sections of the song. Sometimes I'll split the verse up and the chorus up onto different tracks if there's a clean break going to a high part or low part so I can get the EQs different. In this case, he's kind of jumping around a little bit, so I had to automate it. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Right here, he's singing kind of low.
Did you stand? Did you defend?
His voice is really thick and he's close to the mic.
Love until the end.
He's still singing low here.
Seek the truth, find your love.
And he jumps high.
Look up high, aim above.
So I needed to pull out some low mid frequencies in there, and if I left them out in the chorus, then his voice is just getting too thin. So this is going to seem a little wacky, but I did it here with this compressor bank compressor because it's got a single band EQ on it, and that's how I ended up pulling out this lower mid-range. Let me show you what I did. I identified it as 145 hertz, 145.92, and I automated it up and down in these sections. There is an easier way to do this, and I'll show you that in a second. I did it this way, and I'll explain to you in a minute. What I did here was I meticulously listened to it and picked the sections so that if you watch this volume of the EQ right here, the gain of the EQ, you'll see it popping up and down.
In step with time, a candle burns. Smoke goes up, a table turns. Faces glow and light the dark, like a flash of fire from a spark.
And it was something that was really jumping out to me in the mix, and I've noticed it on all these guys, something about the way they sing, and they're jumping around their ranges a bit. Then when it gets up to the chorus here, he's singing low again. Here, let me solo it up.
Seek the truth, find your love, look up high.
Then he goes up there, and I'm not pulling anything out, so I'm not thinning out the vocal too much. And I'll do this with almost everybody. Now, this is a slow and meticulous way to do it, but I felt like it was the best way. And plus, it was the freaking Infamous Stringdusters. There's gonna be no shortcuts. I'm gonna do this the best I can for these guys. Here's another way you can do it, though. Let me show you this. You could use a Pro Q3 or something like that right here. And I went ahead and set it at the same frequency as I had on the other plugin. I set it as a dynamic EQ. What it is like if you right click on it, let me clear the dynamics. So there it is. There's the frequency right there, right? Now, if you right click on it and say make it dynamic, it's got this little compressor setting here. It's like how much do you want it to push down when it sees a lot of that frequency? So you could do this.
In step with time, a candle burns.
Now it pushes it down.
Smoke goes up, a table turns. Faces glow.
And it's going to push that frequency down a little bit more when it hits those points. And if you look at the chorus where he's singing high, it's not really hitting it there because he's higher.
Look up high, aim above, on a road.
So in most cases, that would have worked. However, on this song, there was like a lot of differences, you know, on how much I wanted to push it down, so I wanted to automate it. Now, you could automate this plugin. You could get really fancy with it. You could actually automate the amount of the dynamic EQ. So, like, maybe you could do less here, and then, like, I don't know, none here, whatever, you know? So, oops, maybe not that much. But, you know, so like you could automate. You see the red line here. It's going to go up. Or I'll just automate the dang volume of the EQ. So it's going to push down, but maybe I need it to push down more. So maybe here.
In step with time, a candle burns.
Then maybe here I want even more out. So I'll just automate the actual volume of the EQ down. So it's going to push that EQ down, but it's also pushing down that gain reduction. So it's going to do even more of pushing that frequency down. Check it out.
In step with time, a candle burns. Smoke goes up, a table turns.
You get the idea. The other way I'll use this, and I was talking about this earlier, about these high mid-range frequencies and vocals that just pop out, and it's like, oh man, like vocals sound really harsh and really Sometimes it's literally like 10 places in the song where it gets really freaking loud and you don't really need it anywhere else. Now, I don't have a great example of it on this song because these guys all have pretty smooth voices. But I would find it like this. I would loop a section. This is the most edgy part in the song I can find right here. But as an example, you would go on a rope, and I'll go like this on this frequency. I will boost it up and I'll still up that frequency. And it's always right around here. And I'll find that little frequency that's obnoxious, right? And then I'll make it dynamic. I'll make it a really narrow bandwidth. And I'll pull this sucker down like, I don't know, 7, 8 dB. So when he hits those high frequencies, on a road, babe, we gold. And it'll push those down. Now, as I said before, I may not want this all the way through the song. So often what I'll do is automate that off and on. So it's off there and maybe I only really hear it on this word and I don't know, that word, you know? On a road, babe, we gold. Like I said, not such a great example on this song. I might have to pull up another vocalist to show that. But I've found that if I can just identify these sections where it just gets harsh, and like I said, sometimes it's in the middle of a word. So, you know, let me give you another example. If it's in the middle of a word and it was kind of evolving, because some singers will go, and they'll kind of open their mouth more and it gets harsh for a second and goes away. You could even do something like this. You could, once again, just automate the amount of it. So maybe I started at 0 and I go, man, they're only doing it on part of the words, which is a really common thing with singers. So you'd go, on a road, babe, we go. Whatever it takes, because I don't want to just have one EQ that I set for the whole song. All of the vocals I mix have a certain amount of automation where I'm literally changing EQ in different parts of the song because you just can't pick one for the whole song in most cases. Now, at a certain point, I'm going to start adding reverb and echo and things like that to the vocals. And it's not like it's something that just suddenly happens and I start doing. I actually kind of creep it in along the way. I can't actually say when I start doing it. I don't put it on at the beginning, but once I'm getting into more EQ, I'll maybe creep a little reverb in and all that. I'm also not going to get into the details of picking reverbs and delays for mixes. I think that's a whole other video, but I am going to show you some of the basic ideas that I do with a mix when I'm putting effects on the vocals. And one of the main things I do in a lot of songs is to add more delay or a long delay to the chorus or the hook. So you'll see here, I've got a hook delay. It's on all the time on these background vocals because that's the only places they sing. But you'll see on the lead vocals here, sometimes I have it off, or on this one, it's just down in there a lot quieter, like 10 dB down or more down. But you'll hear here, in the trees, the leaves are new. Just a little bit of it in there to open it up some, but when it gets to the chorus, I want it to be really big. Check it out. It's subtle, but it's in there. Seek the truth, find your love, look high, aim above, on the road, big with gold, let the light shine from your soul. And then another thing I'll do is I'll have an even longer delay or something weirder sounding for specific sections in the song. So right here, you'll see I've got this long delay, and it only happens in a couple spots like here. Time won't stand still, never ends, my friends. I think I've got it turned up a little bit more than I had in the mix. And then it's going to hit here too. Live a good right here. Life to the So that's a basic outline of how I mix vocals. You know, this song right here, it's so amazing and it's got so many great examples of interesting things I do in a mix. And it's also got good examples of stuff that I do, just basic ideas about how I mix acoustic guitar, dobro, fiddle. So I think what I'm going to do over the next couple weeks or so is stick with a song and go through it and talk about you know, what I'm doing on the acoustic guitar. Like I've got banjo. I've actually got dual banjo. There's some interesting things in here. I've got piano. We've actually got a banjo through an amp. We've got Rhodes piano. And there's a reason why all this stuff's in a Stringdusters song that would not normally be in here. One of the more interesting things here is the acoustic bass. I did a lot of automation on that and some specific ideas behind what I was doing in there. I'm going to make videos about that. I'll probably break it out into a couple more sections. So come back next week or the next week after that, because I'm going to have more of this song up there. In the meantime, thanks for watching. Have a good day. And remember, be unique.